Good morning. Welcome to the Starting Fresh panel. And it feels kind of weird not to be driving this thing this morning. So I'm Matt J. I'm joined by Rich Rogers and Lowell Francis, and we're going to be talking about starting brand new games with brand new groups. Our assumption is that this is for a series of games, but we'll speak to one shots as our experience comes up and we talk about that. We'll be leaning on online tabletop RPGs as a primary method of playing. And I'm a terrible host, so I will let our panelists introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about where they're coming from, what their experiences are, and we'll start with Lowell.
Hi, my name is Lowell Francis. I write the Age of Ravens blog, which won an ENnie. I'm the designer and co-writer for Hearts of Wulin, and most importantly, I'm the Gauntlet gaming community manager, which means that I'm running pretty much a new game with a new group every month at least, often multiples of those, and do that constantly.
And Rich Rogers.
Hey, I'm Rich Rogers. I am a co-host and producer of the Plus One Forward podcast, a podcast powered by the apocalypse that's been nominated for a lot of awards, but never won. We're the Susan Lucia podcasts. Thanks, Ken and Robin. You always beat us. And I'm also a game designer, a game master. I run a game that we post up on YouTube, although I'm not the GM currently, but it's the Intercontinental Group of Awesome. And I do run a fair number of games that I hacked to Star Wars for the Gauntlet community. This year, I have run 16 different RPGs that I have never played before. So new game is something I'm excited to talk about with you guys.
And again, I'm Matt J. I run a bunch of stuff for Twitch, ActualPlay. When physical conventions were a thing, I used to run a ton of convention space one-shot stuff, and I run a quarterly game here in Kansas City. So we run a lot of stuff. I'm a software guy, so let's talk about tech stuff first. What are your best practices for setting up, getting new folks onboarded? Let's start with you, Rich.
I think first step is check in with your group. What's the tech level they're comfortable with? Because if you've got a bunch of folks who are really excited about Roll20, then maybe that's where you lean. But if you have neophytes who are like, how does this gaming online work? Then maybe you want to pull back from a high tech setup. I do think that it's pretty important to utilize things like a character keeper. That's my preference versus Roll20, Roll Foundry. There are a lot of tools out there for map combat, but I like let's just get a character sheet out there, way we can get information conveyed to folks. That's I try to keep it nice and simple. But tech issues and tech capabilities are an important conversation to have with your group, like right at the top. Do it before you meet live. Just check in with people on an individual basis because it runs the gamut.
You mentioned a character keeper. What is that?
Oh, character keepers are something I adore. They're a Google spreadsheet that are used to present your information. So we're trying to ape the tabletop experience, the live tabletop experience with a character keeper. Right. And a Google sheet is free to create. And I just checked, the Gauntlet has this Play Aids Google folder where there are over 450 different character sheets or character keepers for different RPGs. There are a few repeats, like we love our Monster Hearts. There's like 15 versions of Monster Hearts. I don't know why, but there are an incredible trove of games, and it's free to use for anyone, members of the Gauntlet or not. And the Gauntlet uses character keepers for almost every game that we run. I've made a fair number of them, and it's a really fun thing. We'll talk about that in game learning and game prep, but that's the short version of a character keeper. I could talk on and on, but that's not what this panel's about.
An aside about character keepers, being a software guy, I don't have spreadsheet skills. I hate messing around with spreadsheets, but folks have done some amazing things with spreadsheets and making them interactive for character play. So that's the first place I go looking for stuff that I don't want to have to make a thing for. So
yeah, yesterday I got excited because somebody was using concatenate in an exciting and interesting way.
I rather write software. I just, man, I hate spreadsheets. I hate them. So, but those are beautiful and they work great. I know I've stolen from there. What works for you, Lowell?
Well, I'll say something that I think is a theme we're going to come back to a couple of times. Is it's important to explain your procedures and model your procedures. And if you're playing with a new group, they don't know how you operate. They don't know how you're working with things. So one of the things you want to establish early is if there are technical issues, like somebody's roboting or somebody drops a call, like how you handle that. Like have one person be the caller for telling people they're roboting or muted. And if you particularly had issues, if your internet connection is bad, or you've had problems where you drop from time to time, tell people, okay, here's how we're going to handle that. Just know that if this happens, and you only have to do that the first session, but you want to establish the thing, especially with a new group, so that if something does happen, they're not saying they go, I don't know what to do. Right. You want to get those like really basic things about problems, on the table.
I've you guys stolen all the best practices, so I do those things. I like to also do I call it a meet and greet because it's a new group or a new composition that we're playing in, and a session 0 at the same time. And early on in that, we will run through some tech stuff, and that is my kind of walk around what everybody has, how we all fit together tech-wise, whether we're using Zoom or StreamYard or whatever the platforms we're going to play on. That's kind of our practice run, and I'll do that. But I do the things you say is early on, as folks are roboting, we're having issues. We talk through what our plan B is for those things when they come up. So,
and I'll say having one person call for things, because there's nothing worse than like having 3 people suddenly shouting at you that you're muted or you're roboting. Like don't make it, because especially with a new group, you haven't played with them before, and suddenly you feel like you've screwed up, and that's not great pressure to put on people right away.
No, and I like that. I haven't done that. I like that idea. I will steal that because I hate it when it happens to me. I get 3 or 4 folks telling me I'm muted or I'm roboting or something like that. So that's a good call. That there should be a caller for that instead of everyone doing that. When we play Twitch, when we play the One Ring on Twitch, Rich Rogers is part of that crew, and so I usually give some of those tech duties over to him while I do the GM stuff. So, anything else you want to add to tech setup, tech stuff? Let's talk about game prep and session prep. Let's go back to Lowell. What works for you? What do you like for new games and new groups?
So I want to say, like, my big admonition, and there's like some key points I know that we've got in the notes that I'm going to let others hit, but I want to say this. If you're playing in a new game, and we're talking about not just like a new group, but maybe it's a new to you game. You don't have to cram. Like don't feel like you have to learn everything about the game. Don't feel like you have to learn all the pieces. Get the basics, figure out what the core resolution is, what character creation is, and what information you need to communicate to the players so that they can make informed decisions during that initial setup. But like, don't burn yourself out before you get started. Read through with a focused approach, but don't try to cram and learn everything about a game, especially if it's complicated, like if we're talking a 2D20 system, or a variation of Forged in the Dark, or and some kind of trad 5e or Pathfinder, anything like that. That's my first thing, is be easy on yourself.
What about you, Rich?
I prep for me is here's my process. I troll through drive-through RPG, itch, Kickstarters that have finally delivered to me from like 2 years ago. It's like Christmas, and I get in the middle of the day. Who even knew that I backed this game? And I'll have this short list of games. Like, I'm kind of interested in this. And then I post it up on the Gauntlet 2 months ahead of time. And I've only skimmed the game. So I've got a 2-month lead time to be able to run it. And then like 6 weeks out, 4 weeks out, somewhere in that window, I start to create the character keeper, because the character keeper won't exist because I picked these really weird ass games. And that creation process of like, okay, what are the stats, or what are the things that are on the character sheet? Like, I'll try to ape whatever character sheet has been created within the book or supplemental material, and that really forces me to understand what are the mechanics that are driving the engine, and how to present it to players is an important part of that process. So I learn the game as I'm creating the character keeper. And
Nice.
there are times when I've figured out that a game wasn't for me in the middle of character keeper creation. That's embarrassing. But hit rate's like 95%, so I don't feel too terribly bad. And you do have enough lead time to communicate with people. But yeah, understanding your character keeper, creating that thing, or just going into it if one already exists and looking through it. I mean, the character sheet is where the rubber hits the road in a game. If it doesn't exist on the character sheet, then it's GM magic. And like, I think we all have GM magic. So that's where a lot of my game prep comes, is trying to understand the game by creating how the players will interact with the system.
Nice. It's good to hear some of the stuff I do internally coming out of the both of you. We've never had this conversation before this way. I will make characters, like 2 or 3 for a new game. I'll sit down after I've skimmed it a couple of times. I will make characters so I know what the players are going through. My thought is, what questions are they going to have for me when we get together to play?
Nice.
But I think unconsciously, I'm also looking at, how does this game work? How does this all fit together? What's happening here? The other thing I like to do for myself, but recently I've started to jazz up the end product and hand it out as these one sheets. I used to call them cheat sheets for the GM for myself. But now I try to make something more player facing, right? Quick rules, some setting stuff, things players might know or want to know, and then turn it over to them. And then maybe on the backside of that, I have GM reference stuff for myself. And especially online, because that could be a PDF now. And I can give them page 1 and keep page 2. And then you can dress it up, put all kinds of setting stuff on the sheet, make a mood out of it. I did that with a sorcerer game, and it turned out pretty good. So I'm moving toward doing that more now than before. But in both cases, I'm learning practical application of the game I've just picked up as we move forward. So
I'll say, related to the character keeper and that what you said about the one sheet. My move now has been build the character keeper, which has the character stuff laid out. I've looked at what the rules are. I've looked at what the character sheet is, and then I've got 2 other pieces. I'm going to build like a one sheet, like I used to do for face to face, a nice one sheet. I build a tab that has, like, here are the core elements of resolution. Like, if we're playing PBTA, it's the basic moves. But in other games, I want to show, like, here's the process that we go through basic for it. If it's crunchy enough, there might be a separate combat tab. But that's our one sheet within the character keeper. And then a page that says, when you do character creation, here are the steps. And often that I can just lift right out of the book. But having those available for the player, that's another way for me to get a handle on what do they need to know. How do these elements work together for the player? I think that's really an important approach these days.
Yeah,
nice.
your one sheet. Sorry, Matt J, I apologize, but Lowell taught me about the one sheet summary early on in a game that we played, and I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Like just a snapshot or reference thing. I'll often have that printed out for games that we play and just have it here. I love games that can do that. I remember the first one I ran into that had a 1-page summary was Don't Rest Your Head by Evil Hat from Fred Hicks, that had a 1-page summary, and I adore that thing. And anytime that I can get a game down to 1 page, I feel really confident about running it.
Nice.
Yeah,
No, I'm a big fan of.
Oh,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, when I did Dune 2D20 recently, that's got a lot of interesting moving parts and things like that. And it really was going through that process of building that character keeper and like modifying from an existing 2D21 to see what the differences were and what the systems were. You know, I felt much more confident after I walked through that process.
Nice, because I hear Dune has a lot of moving parts, so I can't even imagine what that one sheet would look like.
It's got some odd areas in terms of certain factors that I realized as I was going through that, and they go, okay, I need to be aware that they handle zones of movement very differently than I was expecting, and some things like that.
Nice.
I got to ask a question when we're talking about prep, because I really want to hear what you two think. I often am beset by this question as I'm learning a game by creating that character keeper: is rules as written, or snip away the things that you don't think that you're going to get to or like. So which way is your preference?
You're trying to start a fight at 6 a.m. in the morning.
I have 6 a.m. in the morning.
I am and forever always will be a rules as written kind of guy. That comes from my software engineering background. A lot of times they get legacy code or stuff from other stuff that's been around a long time, right? And in my head, before I jump in and start changing stuff, I need to understand what's happening here right now first, right? So that's not to say I won't change a thing, right? Out of the gate, if it's my first time playing this game, I'm going to run it the way it was written, very literally. And then after I have some sessions under my belt, I might change some things to get a different experience that I'm after, right? So I can comfortably say at this point in time, BXD&D is my favorite fantasy go-to fast game if we're going to play short sessions, and I've got house rules for that. But I think we know the OSR, the D&D clones, those things are made for do-it-yourself kind of stuff. So I have a small basket of stuff I want to put in there. But I cringe when I hear folks say they're hacking Burning Wheel, right? I just. But if they're after a particular experience, that's my out. Is then they want a different experience than I want out of it. I run it rules as written, so I'm that guy.
Lowell?
I will make changes if I know the underlying legacy code. Like if I know the underlying basis, and I've run a version of it if it's an iteration of something else. But also I will say I will modify something if it's absolutely not the way I operate at the table, and the tweak is not going to affect more than one system. If it's going to affect more than one system, then I've made a mistake running it. And if I don't like that, if it's something that cascades out, but I've made my bed, now I got to sleep in it, and we'll run it at least once that way to figure it out.
No, that's a good question, Rich. And I think when that comes up, not just here, I think the thing I always throw back out there, because I think we have to be explicit, is, or I do, is that because I run it this way doesn't mean you have to do that, right? I'm about the experience at the table, and you may want something different, and you have to change whatever it is you're doing to get the experience you want. So my way is not the one true gospel way, right? It's how I run stuff. It's what I like, and so I don't like okra though. So right, I don't know. But that's a good question. Well, so where are you? Where do you fall out at?
2 reasons that I do my very best to run rules as written. The first one is if I've told people this is a new game, we're going to play the game, I try to run the game so that if they ever go run it for their friends and they look at a book and they're like, well, wait, Rich didn't do this thing. I don't like that disagreement. And the second one is, while I feel like I know games relatively well, I assume that the game as published was game play tested, was a part of a culture, and so there could be something that in my head or on the page doesn't make sense, that when it hits play will reveal itself. I've seen mechanics that I'm like, I don't know how this is possibly going to work, and it turns out, oh yeah, that is really exciting to have these really swingy dice rolls in Teens in Space. Like, I'm like, oh, this is what D20, but then you hit it and people are rolling D20s and they get super excited. So I
Right.
learned from that. Yeah, rules as written. I try to have faith in the design as much as possible. And then, just like you said, Matt J, once we get in, if it doesn't shape the experience like I like, or we get feedback that, hey, this doesn't work for me, then we'll tweak it. But I do my very best to like hit it, rules as written, and then adjust on the fly, because that's why smart people are doing it, right? That's why we smart people all play games.
Fair enough. I like it. All right, so we talked about tech stuff. We talked about prep, right? And now here we are at the startup of our new group and our new game. Let's talk about some of our startup practices. Let's stay with you, Rich Rogers.
Oh, I'm going to talk about something that I do. So, brand new group, and we're planning on playing for a while. That's my default assumption within this panel. If I don't know most of this group at all, and I have a game that I want to run for mini series, because I don't run forever campaigns anymore. It just doesn't exist for me. So sorry, apologies. There are people who love it, not for me. But if I want to run a mini series, but it has a particular tone or it has a particular level of mechanics, that kind of thing, I'm not sure that folks will be super into it. I do a one-shot trial for that group. Hey, let's get together and let's play a one-shot of Lady Blackbird, or something I know like at the back of my hand. I can run that anytime, so that it's not about learning a brand new game. It's about getting to know, how do these players interact with each other. Let's get everybody introduced. Let's do a little glad handing. Let's have some pocket scenes for some RP. Let's do some dice on the table and see how people interact, what they enjoy, and get a vibe for it. Because I may go into like, I'm really dying to run Blades in the Dark, and I hit a group that that's not really where they engage with mechanics. I may want to pivot, but if I've already introduced Blades in the Dark, I feel like a debt to them that, like, yeah, we're going to see this through. So that one shot trial for a new group, a get to know you game, I found to be really helpful.
Nice. I like that idea of a get to know you game. I know I've done like a meet and greet session, right? To get strangers comfortable with each other. So our first game session, we're not awkward, but a get to know you game, I like that idea. I like that better. How do you get started, Double?
Well, I'll say, and this kind of maybe goes to a question we've just gotten in the chat. One of the most important things, we can, when we bring in a new group, we've obviously given them a pitch. They've signed up for something, or we've talked to them about it, but we need to, in that first session, calibrate where we're at and get that set. And on the Gauntlet, and something that a lot of us do now is the CATS document, which we give on the first session. We go, here's the concept, but reiterate that. Here's the approach we're going to take with the game. Like, here's what we're actually going to do in play. And then tone, to talk about what the tone is, which establishes some touchstones and things like that. And then I usually use the S on CATS for safety. But what I think is important there is that we're talking about what it's a collaborative discussion about what we feel the tone is, what we feel the approach is, and establishing those benchmarks so that if we do have players that want something different, they can talk about that, and we can negotiate about that as a group. We establish a set baseline so that if, when we do get to playing and somebody is trying to later on, play an Ewok Jedi in a game that we're running about, like scoundrels in the Star Wars universe, we can say, hey, this is maybe a little bit off tone. I will say, when I, for example, bring up the X card as a thing in play, I will say you can use the X card for problematic content, for objectionable things, phobic things, triggers. But I also say, if you feel that something has gone wildly off tone,
right, yeah,
from what we've established, you can X card that so that we can stop and have a conversation about it.
right.
Establish that as a tool, as a resource you can use early in that conversation. And just in passing, once you've established that flag, it's something you can go back to if somebody is then pushing against what the tone of the game is. That it is a hard thing because there's a lot of social contract involved with that. So, you don't need to belabor it, but you need to get that flag planted early.
I agree. I think I don't have a whole lot of handling for that because I cheat with my voice. When we talk about hard lines in our game, tone is one of them. If we're playing a spy game, I'm not about funny shenanigans in my spy games, right? I want a serious thriller kind of thing. And if I'm running it, usually in our initial conversations about the game or early on, I kind of, like you said, I kind of set that anchor down and we talk about it. But once we've all agreed on the tone, right, I'm using my dad voice, and I've never had that come back up later on. And so, so that's what I mean by I cheat, is that the things that once we have consensus, the things that I feel are important, tone is one of those things. I will reiterate with my dad voice, and I usually never get any of that back. So I don't have a whole lot of advice there. So I'm glad you guys could weigh in on that.
It's a
For
tough
me,
situation. Oh, I'm sorry, Matt.
No, go ahead. No, you're right. Go ahead.
It's a tough situation. My viewpoint on somebody who's like, we all have this. Let's set the palette. Let's set the tone. We all have all agreed to this, and then all of a sudden, someone comes in with the wacky clown car antics. Either something's going on for them outside of the game,
Right.
and maybe it's good to take a break, like check in with that person,
Right.
or they weren't paying attention during tone, and that's a kind of betrayal that can be really problematic for an entire group. So that's something, like Lowell said, like you talked to the dad voice, don't let it slide. Try to
Right.
deal with it. You can deal with it with dad voice, you can deal with it with like a private conversation, a check-in, but it's important to deal with it early. Otherwise things go off the rails really quick, and it can be unrecoverable.
Sometimes I just thought about this. Sometimes there's a redirect, right? I will say I will take the thing there if we're talking Ewok Jedi's, right? So I will say, so we're all these scoundrels. We got this scoundrel ship. We're running this heist thing, and I would kind of reiterate the tone. Tell me how this Ewok Jedi fits in. What's that look like, right? And I'll, because I'm like, sell me on it, right? If you can make it fit in the fiction that we've established and the tone, then I'm in, right? That's not to say I know
your
everything.
grim, dark Ewok Jedi.
That's right. I'm open to it, right? But you got to make it fit, right? You got to make it fit. And I'm hoping the table is listening and they weigh in too, right? So no, but it is hard. It is rough. But I agree that if you don't, if you let that slide, then I think for me, my fear is the whole tone starts to shift in that game, and then I'm not. Yeah, I will punch out. Right, I can't. It hurts. I think for me, the Rich talked about it early in this startup talk. Setting how many sessions is important to me these days now. I've given up on the forever game. So I will, depending on the game and what I'm feeling, I'll say, hey, let's get together. Let's play 3 to 5 sessions, right? Or I'll say 6 to 8. And those are usually the 2 numbers I run with. Then usually somewhere around the last 2 sessions, I'll say, hey, how we feeling? Do we want to extend and keep playing 3, 5 more sessions? Or do we just want to wrap it up like we originally said, right? sometimes, depending on how I'm feeling, I may not extend it. We originally said 5, and we'll end at 5, right? Um, but sometimes you hit a groove and you wanna squeeze some extra sessions out rather than just let it go unsaid. I'd rather commit to another number of sessions, and that's been working for me the past couple of years now. So I'll continue to do that. Is to say, let's set how many sessions we're playing.
When I first encountered Primetime Adventures, that lit my mind on fire because it phrases in a term of seasons. Like you actually negotiate because there's a mechanic to spotlighting based on the number of sessions you're committing to. Now that can be hard, right? We have real lives, weekly games. Sometimes people want to go run off and get a tattoo and it's out of nowhere, and the game doesn't happen, and so that can be a challenge. But it
I hate
is
when that
great.
happens.
Oh, those guys, crazy. But we love them anyway. But I love that about Primetime Adventures, and that's something that I've learned and I find a lot of value in. In the Gauntlet, we post up a new game. Now, there are some people who run like me right now bi-monthly, and they'll run it for 8 weeks, 9 weeks. But generally, I run a game for a month. So it's going to be 3 to 5 sessions based on how many
Right.
Saturdays there are. And I love that commitment up ahead of time because I think it's easier for some people to try something that I would not want to play the One Ring for 100 sessions, but
Right.
by Dernies, I'll give it a 5 to 8 session slot to feel all those mechanics and get that vibe.
Right.
I'll say another point since we're kind of running down our sort of startup, like first time we're playing with people list here. It is really important in that first session that when you come to people, you have them introduce themselves and you specifically say, and tell us your pronouns. And then when they do their character, you also make sure and tell us your character's pronouns. And then as a game facilitator, it is incumbent on you to make sure that people take those seriously and make sure that people like don't mess them up. Like if somebody does make a mistake with pronoun, you gently but firmly say, that's actually this, you take that and you take that burden on yourself rather than making someone who probably has to do that correction a lot and take that emotional labor, that you take that on. And you make sure to people that they know we're going to do that. We're going to take it seriously, whether it is you as a person or you as a character. We're establishing that, so there's no passive aggressive attempt or forgetfulness or putting that on someone's shoulders. I think that's really important these days.
Absolutely.
No, I agree. I learned that lesson the hard way. I missed some corrections during a game, and there was a woman bystander who caught it and corrected it at the table for me, and I was grateful she was hanging out. It was a Star Wars game, and being there in that moment, having that experience, I don't make that mistake going forward. So it is important to get those right. And like Tone, don't let it slide. Um, some folks just miss it, and you can fix that. As the facilitator, you can take that on. I feel like that is part of the gig, part of the job. So
make space for it in your character keeper, right? Put pronouns like right there for the character and for the player, because
right.
you're give not permission, but you're like making space for it. This is a thing that is already extant on the character sheet. Again, if it isn't on the character sheet, is it really part of the game? And I also like if you're at an actual, like on the days when we play face to face again, table tents, little index card folded over with character name, that kind of stuff. I usually use character name like once we drop in and are heavy in play, but it is always nice to have that. And when I run at Origins Games on Demand, I have a larger index card, and as people sit down and introduce themselves, I'll like make a note, name, pronouns in a circle, like where they are, and then I have that there, and that's always present for me in case I needed to have that conversation out of character, and I know the pronouns that they prefer. It's important.
Right. I'm a fan of the character tints because it fills that role plus a bunch of other stuff. So I like it. I think that moves us into safety tools, man. I think in this day and age, they're super important, and I can go on and on and on about my experience with safety tools. you folks have some practices, some safety tools you like. What's your approach to safety tools in game sessions and introducing them to new groups?
One, it's a plural. It's a safety tools. We use a layered set of tools. My go-to for this, and your tools may vary, but I think you need to have several different things. We have a baseline, which besides the cats is we're using lines and veils to establish material that is off camera or not at the table or even ask first. However you do that, and there are like, red light, green light, however you establish that, you've got that as the baseline. And then the in-play tool for me is the X card. And there's this discussion about what it can be used for, and the X card complements the lines and veils, because if we start hitting on something that people haven't noticed that's a lines and veil, it's a great time to X card. And then we use an open door policy. You can leave whenever you want, if you have to step away, whatever. And we also establish permission, like, hey, if this turns out to not be the game for you and you leave, no harm, no foul. These are all three things. Of course, there are a host of other tools to use, but I think it's really important that it's not one tool. It's a set of tools that have backups, that play into each other, that create layers that can handle different situations. That's really important for me.
What's important to you, Rich?
From the jump, it is not a discussion of if we're using safety tools. It is a discussion of what safety tools are we comfortable with. It's non-negotiable for me at this point. I think a lot of us have horror stories of those games when, oh yeah, I can read the table, and guess what? You can't. Lines and veils are really great. Lines, veils, and ask first is really cool. I like ask first as a thing. Like, maybe midichlorians are okay with me in my Star Wars game, but like, check in with us as players before you just drop that like a dead fish right in the middle of the table, and we got to deal with it in fiction. I love the ask first. I do think X card, like, even with a group that I've played with for years, I want that X card, because that's an important like pull stop. And I try to tell people two things about the X card. First one, you can X card something that was true last week that you X card now, because maybe something happened this week and that really bothers you. So prologue doesn't mean that it has to exist now. You can even, because you're playing the X card, you can even X card like, hey, I need to, can we X card? You can explain it if you want. You don't have to defend yourself. That's one of the things that makes very important about X card. You don't have to defend yourself. I'm not going to challenge you on the X card. You X card it, it's inviolate. We excise it from play. But you can like soft, can we not do that this week?
Right.
And if you in a group that doesn't accept that, like, just leave. Just open door. Create your own open door, because that's not a place that cares about you as a person. And I play games with people who care about me as a person. And the other one is that, like, even if it happens in the moment, you don't X card it right away, that does not mean you can't X card it later. Like, I've had someone who like threw in the name of someone I knew as an NPC, and I'm like, okay, I'll let it ride. And you let it ride, and then all of a sudden it turns out they've made this person like a dirtbag, and it really starts to bother you. You can say, hey, I need to, like, can we change that name because of X? I've had people change names because there were 3 NPCs that all had nearly similar names.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. Let's fix that. And it, just like John Harper said on the chat, culture of being able to correct and revise things on the fly in a low stakes way is a really important part of building that culture early and often.
No, that's nice. I like that. And it's true. Because we're running out of time. I'm like I said, I'm not driving, so this is weird, not driving.
Oh, I'm going to jump in and take the wheel. Mad J, we can't talk about starting fresh without you unveiling to people this thing that you have mystified me with in multiple games, Mad J, where you have this way of teaching sections of the rules through encounters that it's just like, I'm looking at the Wondering, and I'm like, there's this whole social thing, and then there's like all these other bits, and you do such a great job of spooling it out. Talk about how you do that, Matt J.
I am humbled and embarrassed. Thank you, man. I don't know. I like games. It's no secret. Burning Wheel is my favorite fantasy role playing game. Right. Lord of the Rings the One Ring has a lot of interlocking mechanics too. So games that have several systems built on top of a core thing intrigue me. I like that. But I end up running lots of games for new tables, so you're always teaching and playing at the same time. But I want them to get the full game experience that I have, right? And so what I try to do is get the core system in their hands. So we're playing the One Ring, and it was important for me for you guys to get how do we make regular tests, just the core tests. And so our first session, that's what we did. We did a lot of that core test stuff. I think we also fit in combat because that's easy, right? That's built right on top of that. So then after that, in my head, I'm looking for things that the players do that can move us into some of these other systems, right? If they don't trigger that, then I'm also looking at things in the fiction that we have done that I can push us toward some of these other systems. So I can't remember, we had the council in the One Ring, and I don't remember who we had that with, but someone asked an NPC of a thing, and that was kind of the trigger to use the social rules. And so I moved us into that. My thought is if we made it back to Rivendell and that didn't happen, I had an encounter or a thing that would trigger that mechanic, and we would use that. But I'm always looking for the players to trigger those things, even if it's just close, like a hair trigger. I'm like, okay, let's do this because it's low stakes. I'm gonna teach you a new mechanic. You don't have to agonize about it, right? Because the stakes are small. I'm not going to let you hurt yourself or fail, right? Because it's early on. Because I want to take the kid gloves off later, and now you're on your own, kinda, when we do it again the second time, right? Um, but I think that's an organic thing that happened for me because I run so many new players through games, and I found that's a good way to. I also I hate. Um, Contrived examples for things. I make it real and let's use it for real. Because then I'll have real questions. If you give me something contrived, I feel like as an engineer, I might have contrived questions that aren't real. And then I'm navel gazing and I'm old and that makes me cranky, man. Yeah. So that's what I do with new games. I try to run through, um, look at the systems that are in there that they're going to have to learn. I'm going to have to teach, and then figure out where can I insert those things, like floating encounters. And that's it. That's the magic, man.
I'm going to say, for me, one of the most important things, like first session, second session, you need to model or make explicit. Like there are three things that for me are really, really hugely important. One, how you're handling order, how you're calling on people, how are we doing this, like how are we round robining. To show them there is an order. We're going to go on. You can jump in if you need to, but I'm going to kind of traffic manage, and we can shift it up. But trust me that we're going to get to you, and model that I am going to give everybody time. Two, if there's information gathering, like study questions or whatever, I model that as early as possible so they see how that process works in the game, because it varies from game to game. They need to know that. And then number three, and again, this depends on the game, how information gets passed from player to player. If we're doing an investigation game, I often will say, when we get to a following scene, you can assume that the player's information gathered in the previous scene, you've got to ask questions to build on. Unless the game has a thing where we are building that split and we want to create that tension, no, we're doing the investigation phase, we're building on each other. But players need to know that explicitly, or else they'll go, well, I didn't know that, so I'm going to go and do this. No, let's not bullshit and waste a bunch of time.
Right.
Let's keep this moving. But model your approach to that and how you want to handle it at the table early.
Anything you want to add, Rich?
I think Lowell's done that well. I just reiterate what you said. It's good stuff.
No, that is good stuff. I think for me, it's a lot of shorthand for me, and so having this conversation with you guys, you articulate a lot of the things that's a shorthand or short jargon, and makes me think about with intention the things I do by nature. So I think we're down to our last 5 minutes. So where can folks find you out on the social internets? Rich Rogers.
Oof, before I do that, we got 5 minutes. So I just want to say one thing that I think is really important for new groups that happens at the end of each session is feedback. And it can be challenging at times for people who've never given direct feedback, rather than running and complaining about it on Facebook, on Twitter. But I do stars and wishes because it helps to create a culture of a loop of us having a conversation. The wishes, what are things that you'd like to see in future sessions? What is it that you wish you understood better about the game mechanics, that kind of thing? And it's important to me to have that out in the open with everyone. When I run games, I always have that portion recorded, because if I can't watch the whole last game, I'll at least watch that last bit, because I think it's really important to create that culture of like, okay, let's adjust to taste. Like, we're all cooks in this kitchen, so how do we make that best? And so that's important. I want to sneak that in. Oh, Matt J, you want to hit that question from Blake?
Yes, please. I'll push folks to the Big Bad Con webpage for our bio links and stuff. So let's grab questions and do that. So if you want to keep going, that's cool.
So the question is, do you use media novel touchstones, or are they a distraction? I think, yes, you can use them, but you'd better check in with players about their experience of it. Do not assume that when you say swashbuckling or whatever, or give a particular novel, that the players know it, because that can be gatekeeping, it can be exclusionary. Check in, mention multiples, and talk about tone in relation to that. Like, if you're going to do touchstones, you need to use them cautiously and in, again, a layered set of approaches.
Yeah, same here. I run Star Wars games every Saturday, Star Wars Saturdays, but you have to be this tall to enter is, have you seen the original trilogy of movies? And that's it. That's the only thing that I kind of say, why are you here if you haven't seen those? Go watch those instead. But if you haven't seen Rebels, if you haven't seen Rogue One, if you haven't seen Star Wars Resistance, I don't care. If you haven't read the novels, the comics, listen to the audiobooks, that's fine. I only use that to flavor things, and I do everything I can to couch it in, it's like this. And I don't say, I don't make it an insular thing where like me and one other person can joke and kiss about a particular media touchstone. So yeah, I can find it to be a distraction, especially the further off the beaten path it is. So if I bring it in, I explain what context it has, what visuals it has, what the motif, what it means for now, and then it exists, and move on. What about you, man? Jay, media novel touchstones work for you? No? Yes, no?
No, they do, but I think you both are right. I think you have to be careful about how you use them. If I get at least two or half the table that have seen the thing, I'm using it as a reference point. This situation is like this, and then usually those folks will kind of reenact a little bit of it, and so the folks who haven't can get the idea, right? Where it's a distraction for me if we're playing Star Wars and I say a thing and someone contradicts because they've got deep cut lore that I like Star Wars. I've seen all the movies. I haven't read all the books, and so when you bring that to the table and the rest of us are out of the loop, I don't want to turn the game into an argument about what you're adding to the game, and so it can be a distraction that way. So, or if I introduce a thing someone folks aren't into. So yeah, so I think I'm sorry, I'm trying to drive and talk. So I think, yeah, it can be a distraction. I think you got to be careful about how you manage that, but I think you can do a great job, and it could be a great shorthand in the game you're playing by including those touchstones, right? I like to beat on D&D as a touchstone because, love it or hate it, right? It's here, it's part of our culture, and it's a good touchstone if we're talking about games. So it is time. I think I'm not sure, but at some point our feed will go away. This has been fun. Thank you guys.
I want to say
Thanks,
one
Jay.
last thing. I want to say one last thing. Bad behavior in session 1 is not going to change unless you fix it. Like that's a last, most important thing to me. You've got to fix those problems early.
Wow, that was perfect.
Oh yeah, I think you can still hear us, but there we go. That was it.
Good ender, Lowell.